To the world, she was just a shy girl in a perfect house, but behind the luxury there was silence and cruelty. A whisper broke the facade and exposed truths ignored for so long, and it was there that it was proven. The courage of a child can bring down even the best-dressed monsters. The afternoon sun bathed the impeccable gardens of Albury Manor in Highview Heights, an upscale district of London. Among imperial palm trees and rare flowers imported from various countries, the property of almost 5,000 square meters was considered one of the most beautiful residences in the marvelous city. To those who saw it from the outside, that place seemed the perfect picture of success and happiness. Sophia, a 7-year-old girl with brown hair and curious eyes, was kneeling on the cold Italian marble floor of the main living room. Her small hands, red and bruised, scrubbed the immaculately white floor while silent tears streamed down her delicate face. A few meters from her, Deborah Montgomery of Albury, her 34-year-old stepmother, watched with a contained smile, holding a glass of red wine. "Don't you see this stain, Sophia? Keep scrubbing until it completely disappears. A girl needs to learn to be meticulous from an early age, doesn't she?" Deborah's voice was melodious, almost sweet, contrasting with the cruelty of her words. "If your father arrives and finds the floor like this, he'll be very disappointed with you." Sophia didn't reply. She had learned that answering only made things worse. She continued scrubbing, even knowing that the supposed stain was just a shadow from the light entering through the window. This was just one of many discipline exercises imposed by her stepmother when they were alone in the manor. Sophia's life had changed drastically in the last 2 years. After losing her mother to a serious illness, her father, businessman Roderick Albury, one of the biggest investors in the British real estate market, plunged into work to escape the pain. 6 months later, on a business trip to Manchester, he met Deborah, an elegant image consultant for celebrities, and the romance was swift. In less than a year, they were married. To the outside world, Deborah was perfect. Elegant, articulate, and with an impressive philanthropic work at the helm of the newly created New Beginnings Foundation, which supposedly helped underprivileged children in London. In London society, she was seen as an example of a loving stepmother who had sacrificed part of her career to care for her stepdaughter after a family tragedy. The reality within the manor walls, however, was completely different. "I think that's enough for today. Sophia," Deborah checked her diamond watch, "your father should be arriving. Go clean yourself up and put on that blue dress we bought last week. Remember what we talked about. If he asks about your day, say it was wonderful, that we baked cookies together and that you played in the garden." "Understood," Sophia nodded, getting up with difficulty. Her legs were numb from the time she had spent kneeling. "And Sophia—" Deborah knelt down, adjusting the girl's hair with false tenderness. "If you tell him anything different, you know what happens, don't you? Your father is a very busy man with too many problems. He doesn't have time to deal with lies from a problematic child. And you don't want to end up in that place for confused children I showed you on the computer, do you?" Sophia's eyes widened in fear. The threat of being sent away to some institution for problematic children was constant. Deborah had shown her photos of gloomy places, inventing terrible stories about what happened to girls who caused problems for their families. "No, Aunt Deborah. I promise." "Good. And don't call me Aunt. I'm your mother now." Deborah smiled, satisfied. "Now go." Sophia quickly went up the stairs towards her room. The spacious area, decorated in shades of pink and white by a renowned designer, contrasted with the emptiness she felt. There were dozens of toys perfectly organized on shelves, but Sophia rarely had permission to play with them. "Toys are for children who deserve them," Deborah would say. Hidden under her bed mattress was a small sketchbook, the only place where Sophia allowed herself to express herself. Pages and pages of dark drawings. A small girl surrounded by dark clouds, blue tears, monsters with smiling faces. It was her visual diary, her only confidant. That afternoon, however, something unexpected would happen. Roderick Albury, after a cancelled meeting, decided to return home early. His driver, Anthony, who had worked for the family for over 20 years, parked the Mercedes at the manor's main entrance. "Mr. Roderick, do you want me to wait to take you to another engagement?" Anthony asked. "It won't be necessary." "You can go home, Anthony. Tomorrow we'll meet at 8 a.m. for the meeting downtown." Roderick entered silently through the side door, wanting to surprise his daughter and wife. In recent months, he felt that something was wrong. Sophia, once a cheerful and talkative child, was becoming increasingly quiet and withdrawn. Deborah's explanations always seemed reasonable. It's grief, Roderick. Children process loss in different ways. She just needs time and stability. Upon entering the main living room, Roderick froze at the scene he saw. Sophia was still kneeling, cleaning a last part of the floor, while Deborah, with her back to the entrance, said in a low but perfectly audible voice, "I hope you learned your lesson today, Sophia. The next time you spill anything on the floor, you'll spend the entire day cleaning, not just a few hours, and no dinner. Clumsy children don't deserve—" "What's going on here?" Roderick's grave voice cut through the air like a razor. Deborah spun around in a start, almost dropping her wineglass. Her face instantly transformed, her usual calculated smile taking its place. "Roderick, what a wonderful surprise. Sophia and I were just playing house. Weren't we, Sophia?" Her eyes fixed on the girls, communicating a silent threat. Sophia remained motionless, her small body trembling. For the first time in many months, the girl saw an opportunity. Her gaze met her father's, a silent plea. Roderick approached his daughter, noticing her red and bruised hands. He touched them gently, seeing the marks of soap and the hard brush. His eyes shifted to the bucket of dirty water nearby, the heavy-duty cleaning brush, clearly unsuitable for a 7-year-old's delicate hands. "Sophia, why are your hands like this?" he asked, his voice betraying the growing anger he was trying to control. Before Sophia could answer, Deborah intervened. "Roderick, darling, don't be dramatic." Sophia wanted to help Mrs. Josephine with the cleaning. You know how she loves to imitate adults. I told her she didn't need to, but she insisted. "It's just a game." Roderick raised his hand, silencing her. He turned back to his daughter, kneeling to meet her gaze. "Sophia, tell me the truth. Is this a game?" At that moment, something shifted in the girl's eyes. A small spark of hope ignited. In an almost inaudible voice, she replied, "No, Daddy, it's not a game." Sophia's words fell like stones into the silence of the room. Roderick felt his blood run cold as he observed his daughter's pale face, marked by fear and exhaustion. He looked again at the girl's injured hands, then at the impeccably clean floor, and finally at Deborah, whose expression oscillated between surprise and controlled irritation. "Roderick, she's confused," Deborah said, approaching. "Sophia has been having nightmares lately, and sometimes mixes fantasy with reality. I spoke to her psychologist about it last week, and—" "What psychologist?" Roderick interrupted. "You never told me about psychologist appointments." A heavy silence fell over the room. Mrs. Josephine, the housekeeper, who had worked in the house for over 15 years, appeared at the kitchen door, drawn by the raised voices. Her eyes met Sophia's, and the old woman quickly lowered her gaze, a gesture that did not go unnoticed by Roderick. "Sophia, go upstairs with Mrs. Josephine. Take a bath and rest a little," Roderick said in a soft but firm voice. "We'll talk later, okay?" The girl nodded and went to the housekeeper, who gently took her hand. When the two left the room, Roderick turned to Deborah, his face now a mask of contained fury. "What have you done to my daughter?" In the following hours, Albury Manor became the stage for an intense confrontation. Deborah, accustomed to manipulating situations, tried all her tactics. She denied, she cried. She accused Sophia of being a problematic child who made up stories to get attention, and even suggested that Mrs. Josephine was poisoning the girl's mind against her. But something had changed in Roderick. The image of Sophia's injured hands, the terror in his daughter's eyes, the way all the household staff seemed to walk on eggshells around Deborah, all these signs he had ignored for so long now seemed obvious and inescapable. That same night, after putting Sophia to sleep, Roderick made a decision that would forever change the course of their lives. In his study, with trembling hands, he typed an email to his personal lawyer, Marcus Fenton, and another to the London Family Court. The subject, urgent report of child abuse. The next morning, while Deborah was still asleep, Roderick took Sophia to his sister Beatrice's house in Chelsea. He briefly explained the situation and asked his sister to care for the girl for a few days. "Are you sure about this, Roderick?" Beatrice asked, worried. "We're talking about very serious accusations against your wife." "I am, Bea. I was blind for too long. But now I have no doubts." 2 days later, a woman of approximately 40, with grey hair tied in a simple bun and a penetrating gaze, parked her modest car in front of the imposing gate of Albury Manor. Louisa Miller had been a social worker for 22 years, specializing in cases of domestic violence and child abuse. Known for her tenacity and sensitivity, she had been assigned to investigate the complaint made by Roderick. Upon being received at the manor, Louisa immediately noticed the oppressive atmosphere of the place, despite all the apparent luxury. Deborah, impeccably dressed and with a rehearsed smile, led her through the house. "As you can see, Ms. Miller, we offer only the best for Sophia. She has everything a child could dream of," Deborah said as she showed the girl's room. Louisa observed carefully, not only the physical environment, but Deborah's non-verbal cues, the way she spoke about Sophia always in terms of material possessions, never of affection or emotional connection. There was something artificial and calculated in every gesture. "And where is Sophia now?" Louisa asked. "She's at her aunt's house. Roderick took her without consulting me, which I consider absurd. I've been her mother for 2 years. I take care of every detail of her life," Deborah replied, her tone gently indignant. "I'm sure he's influencing her against me. Sophia is an impressionable child, you know. Since losing her biological mother, she has episodes of fantasy and attention-seeking behaviors." Louisa merely nodded, maintaining her neutral expression as she took notes. She asked to see the rest of the house and requested individual interviews with the staff. "I'm available to answer any questions, but I see no need to involve the staff," Deborah protested. "They have their duties and—" "Ms. Albury, this is an official investigation. I need to follow protocol," Louisa interrupted firmly. Reluctantly, Deborah agreed. While the stepmother organized an elaborate coffee in the living room, Louisa took the opportunity to return to Sophia's room, this time alone. The room was too impeccable for a 7-year-old's room. The toys looked like exhibits, untouched. The books on the shelf were organized by height and color, something unlikely for a child of that age. Guided by years of experience, Louisa began searching in places children usually use as hiding spots: under the mattress, behind furniture, inside toy boxes. It was under a loose board near the bed that she found the treasure, a sketchbook carefully hidden. As she leafed through it, Louisa felt a knot in her throat. Page after page showed disturbing drawings. A small figure, clearly representing Sophia, surrounded by menacing shadows, a tall woman with a distorted smile, scenes of punishment, blue tears falling like rain. In the corner of several pages, there were simple writings. In childish handwriting, "Please help. I want my mum. I'm scared." Louisa discreetly photographed the pages with her cell phone and put the sketchbook back exactly where she had found it. Then she went to interview Mrs. Josephine. The housekeeper, initially reluctant, eventually gave in when she realized the seriousness of the investigation. "I'm afraid of losing my job, madam. I've worked here for many years and I need this salary to help my grandchildren," the nervous woman confessed. "I understand your concern, Mrs. Josephine, but we are talking about a child's well-being. Any information you give me will be treated confidentially," Louisa assured her. The housekeeper then reported the changes she had observed in Sophia's behavior since Deborah's arrival. The girl, once cheerful and talkative, had become withdrawn and fearful. She told of disproportionate punishments, denied meals and constant humiliations when Roderick was not present. How Sophia was forced to perform strenuous and inappropriate household chores for her age. Once, I found the girl locked in the dark basement, trembling with fear. Mrs. Deborah said it was a punishment because she had spilled juice on the new rug, Mrs. Josephine reported, with tears in her eyes. "I wanted to do something, but she threatened to fire me if I told Mr. Roderick. I have 5 grandchildren to raise." "Madam," after Mrs. Josephine, Louisa interviewed the gardener, Mr. Augustus, who confirmed having frequently seen Sophia alone in the garden, crying, especially after Deborah's arrival. He also reported that the girl was no longer allowed to play on the grass or touch the flowers, so as not to get dirty. The driver, Anthony, was equally revealing. He told how Deborah treated Sophia coldly when she thought no one was watching, and how the girl seemed to stiffen with fear in her stepmother's presence. By the end of the day, Louisa had a clear and disturbing view of the situation. Her next step would be to interview Sophia, but not at the manor. She scheduled a meeting at Beatrice's house for the next day. Deborah, realizing that the situation was getting out of her control, made one last attempt as she accompanied Louisa to the exit. "Ms. Miller, I hope you understand the context. Sophia is a child who went through a great trauma losing her mother. Children like that often create fantastical narratives to deal with pain. Roderick and I only want the best for her." Louisa looked directly into Deborah's eyes. She saw there not concern but calculation. The mask of the perfect stepmother had small cracks, and behind them, Louisa glimpsed something cold and manipulative. "Ms. Albury, my job is to ensure the child's well-being." "That is exactly what I will do," she replied simply, without revealing her conclusions. That night, Louisa drafted a preliminary report detailing her observations and the interviews conducted. The document would be fundamental for the next steps. She was determined to protect Sophia, even knowing that she would face the influence and power of the Alburys. Across town, in her elegant apartment in Canary Wharf, Deborah was making frantic calls. To her lawyer, to influential friends, to media contacts. The war for narrative control was just beginning, and Deborah Montgomery of Albury was not used to losing. The next morning, the prestigious London Society magazine published an extensive profile of Deborah Montgomery of Albury. The cover story extolled her philanthropic work at the helm of the New Beginnings Foundation, her impeccable elegance, and especially her role as a dedicated stepmother who gave up an international career to care for her orphaned stepdaughter. Carefully selected photos showed Deborah and Sophia at charity events, the stepmother always with a protective arm around the girl who smiled shyly for the cameras. Journalist Julian Myers, from the esteemed newspaper The Truth, frowned as he read the article over his breakfast. Something in those images deeply disturbed him. As an investigative reporter for over 15 years, Julian had developed a sixth sense for detecting artificially constructed narratives, and that article reeked of fabrication. "Curious," he murmured to himself, noting the publication date, exactly when rumors emerge about a child abuse investigation in the Albury family. What a convenient coincidence. Julian had heard whispers about the case through a contact at the family court. Nothing official yet. Just comments about a powerful businessman reporting his own wife for ill treatment of his daughter. The kind of story that would normally be hushed up by power and money, but which, for some reason, this time seemed to be gaining traction. Meanwhile, in a modest apartment in Chelsea, Louisa Miller prepared for her meeting with Sophia. She had brought special materials for this interview: paper and colored pencils, dolls representing different family members, illustrated books about emotions. Tools that would help the girl express what she might not be able to verbalize. Beatrice received Louisa with a cup of coffee. "Sophia is in the guest room. She slept badly, had nightmares. She's still very quiet, but she's a little more relaxed away from that house." Louisa nodded. It's common for children who have experienced traumatic situations to have sleep disturbances. "I'll talk to her now, but it needs to be a safe and private environment. Could you stay nearby, but not in the same room?" "Of course," Beatrice agreed. "I'll take you to Sophia." The room where Sophia was staying was simple but cozy. The girl was sitting on the bed, leafing through an illustrated book. When she saw Louisa, she flinched slightly. "Hello, Sophia. My name is Louisa. I work helping children and families. Can I talk to you for a little while?" Louisa's voice was calm and gentle. Sophia looked at her aunt, who nodded encouragingly, and then made a small gesture of agreement. Beatrice discreetly left the room, leaving the door ajar. Louisa sat on the floor, creating an informal space between her and the girl. She took the materials she had brought from her bag and placed them on a small rug. "Sophia, I brought some things for us to play with while we talk. Do you like to draw?" During the next hour, Louisa conducted a carefully structured interview disguised as play. Through drawings and dolls, Sophia began hesitantly to reveal fragments of her life in the manor. At first, her answers were short and evasive, clearly conditioned by fear. But little by little, as she realized she was in a safe environment, she began to open up. "And how do you feel when you're with Aunt Deborah?" Louisa asked, watching as Sophia manipulated the dolls. The girl picked up the doll representing her stepmother and placed it far from the one representing herself. "She doesn't like me to call her aunt. She says she's my mother now, but she's not. And how does she act when your father isn't home? Sophia was silent for a moment. Then she took the doll representing her father and hid it under a cushion. When Daddy leaves, she changes. Her voice gets different. She says, "I'm a bad, dirty girl. That I cause a lot of trouble." As the conversation progressed, more disturbing revelations emerged. The physical punishments, kneeling for hours, taking cold baths when she disobeyed, sleeping on the bedroom floor when she didn't deserve the comfortable bed. The deprivation of food as punishment. The social isolation, not being allowed to play with other children because she would tell lies about the family. The constant threats of being sent to a place for problematic children if she complained or told anyone. She said that if I told Daddy, he wouldn't believe me, that I would go far away and never see him again. Sophia was crying now, hugging a teddy bear Beatrice had given her. Louisa felt her heart clench, but maintained her professional composure. "Sophia, you're being very brave telling me all this, and I want you to know that you did nothing wrong. Nothing at all." At the end of the interview, Louisa had more than enough evidence for her report. She said goodbye to Sophia with a gentle hug and went to talk to Beatrice and Roderick, who had arrived during the interview. "Mr. Albury, based on what I've seen and heard, I will recommend an immediate protective order for Sophia," Louisa informed him. "This means she should not return to the manor while the investigation is ongoing. Do you have a safe place where they can stay?" "They can stay here," Beatrice offered immediately. "I have enough space and I love my niece. I'll do whatever it takes to protect her." Roderick nodded, grateful. His face showed clear signs of stress and guilt. "How did I not notice before? How could I be so blind?" "Psychological abuse is often invisible to outsiders, Mr. Albury," Louisa explained. "Skilled manipulators like your wife are experts at showing one face to the world and another inside the home. Don't blame yourself. The important thing is that you acted when you realized." That same afternoon, while Louisa finalized her report for the judge responsible for the case, Deborah's world began to crumble. Her lawyer, Dr. Raymond Vance, one of London's most expensive and influential, called with disturbing news. "Deborah, the situation is more serious than we imagined. The assigned social worker is Louisa Miller." "So what? Who is this woman?" Deborah asked, annoyed, as she walked through the empty manor. "She's known for her integrity and competence. She's not impressed by power or money. She's taken down very influential families in child abuse cases before. And from what I've heard, she found substantial evidence." Deborah sat down, feeling control of the situation slipping through her fingers. "What evidence?" "I haven't done anything any rigorous mother wouldn't do. Apparently there are testimonies from household staff, drawings made by the child, and her own testimony. Judge Claudia Rivers, who has the case, is known for being extremely protective of minors. She has already issued an order prohibiting any contact you have with Sophia until the conclusion of the investigation." "This is absurd," Deborah shouted. "Roderick is manipulating all this. He probably bribed those ungrateful employees. And that girl has always been problematic. She invents stories." "Deborah," the lawyer interrupted firmly, "I need you to understand the gravity of the situation. This isn't just about child custody. We're talking about possible criminal charges of child abuse." A heavy silence fell over the line. For the first time, Deborah felt true fear. Her mind, however, was already working on a strategy. "Raymond, I want you to file a countersuit immediately. Accuse Roderick of parental alienation. Say he's using his daughter as a weapon against me out of jealousy of my independent career. Hire private investigators. I want to know everything about this Louisa Miller, anything we can use against her." The next day, the war for narratives intensified. While Louisa presented her report to the family court, recommending the maintenance of the protective measure and specialized psychological evaluation for Sophia, the London newspapers and news portals woke up with full-page advertisements for the New Beginnings Foundation. The advertisements showed a smiling Deborah, surrounded by underprivileged children, with the headline, "Transforming Lives Through Love and Education." Below, in smaller letters, "Deborah Montgomery of Albury dedicates her life to creating a better future for our children." Simultaneously, exclusive notes began circulating in social columns about a well-known real estate businessman who was allegedly using his own daughter in a petty revenge against his current wife, whose career was overshadowing his. Julian Myers, the journalist from The Truth, observed this movement with growing interest. After a few calls to his contacts, he managed to get Louisa Miller's number and arranged a discreet meeting. In a quiet cafe in Hampstead, Louisa listened attentively as Julian explained his interest in the case. "I'm not looking for sensationalism, Ms. Miller. For years I've been investigating how powerful families hush up abuse cases, especially when children are involved. It's a recurring pattern, and almost always the victims end up silenced." Louisa pondered carefully. As a professional, she was limited by confidentiality. As a human being, she knew that the media could be an important ally against Deborah's power and influence. "I cannot comment on the specific case, Mr. Myers, but I can talk about general patterns of psychological abuse, about how children from wealthy families are often rendered invisible in situations of domestic violence, and about how abusers tend to use their social status as a shield." Julian smiled. He had caught the message between the lines. "It would be a pleasure to hear about these general patterns, Ms. Miller, and who knows, relate them to real cases that illustrate the problem." Thus, while Deborah mobilized her resources to build an immaculate public image, the gears of justice and investigative journalism began to move towards the truth. In Beatrice's apartment, Sophia slept without nightmares for the first time in many months. Her father, sitting beside the bed, watched over her sleep, silently vowing that he would never again allow anyone to hurt her. Julian Myers' article was published on a Wednesday morning, occupying the front page of The Truth with a hard-hitting headline, "The Silence of the Privileged: How Child Abuse Hides Behind Power and Money." Without mentioning specific names, the text drew a clear parallel with the Albury case, describing an elegant manor in Highview Heights where a child suffered in silence while society applauded her tormentor. The article included an interview with Louisa Miller, identified only as a veteran social worker specializing in child abuse, who spoke about patterns of psychological violence in elite families. Abuse in wealthy families has specific characteristics. It often leaves no visible marks, but it destroys a child's self-esteem and emotional security, and it is almost always accompanied by an impeccable social facade. The abuser cultivates an irreproachable public image. Deborah read the article while having her breakfast on the manor's veranda. Her hands trembled with rage as she turned the newspaper pages. She recognized herself between the lines, even without being directly named. Immediately, she called her lawyer and her press advisor. "I want to sue this newspaper for libel and defamation. They are clearly implying that I am an abuser." "Technically, Deborah, they didn't mention your name," Dr. Raymond explained patiently. "A lawsuit at this moment would only bring more attention to the case and could be interpreted as an admission of guilt." Frustrated, Deborah changed her strategy. Through her press advisor, she organized an exclusive press conference for London's main media outlets, deliberately excluding The Truth. With rehearsed tears and a choked voice, she presented herself as a victim of a conspiracy. "I dedicated my life to helping children through the New Beginnings Foundation. I gave up professional opportunities to be Sophia's mother after the tragic loss she suffered. And now I am the target of absurd accusations driven by interests I do not know." The cameras captured her perfect face, marked by carefully calculated tears. "I only ask for a fair trial away from sensationalist spotlights." Deborah's strategy was clear: mobilize public opinion in her favor before the case advanced in court. And it was working. Several outlets reproduced her version uncritically, painting her as an unjustly treated benefactor and questioning Roderick's motivations. Meanwhile, at Beatrice's house, Sophia continued her slow recovery process. Child psychologist Dr. Felicity Stone, appointed by the family court, visited the girl regularly for therapy sessions. Using techniques appropriate for traumatized children, Felicity helped Sophia express feelings she had suppressed for so long. "She exhibits all the classic signs of continued psychological abuse," Felicity explained to Roderick after a session. "Fear of abandonment, low self-esteem, extreme anxiety, difficulty trusting. But there is hope. Children are incredibly resilient when given adequate support." Louisa Miller also followed the case closely. One morning, upon arriving for a follow-up visit, she found Roderick visibly disturbed. "Deborah has filed a formal request to visit Sophia," he explained. showing the recently arrived court documents. She claims I am practicing parental alienation and harming the bond between her and the girl. Louisa examined the papers with concern. This is a common tactic in cases like this. She is trying to use the system against us. But don't worry. The decision on visits rests with the judge, and she will have access to our reports before deciding. The legal battle intensified day by day. For every move by Sophia's protection team, Deborah and her lawyers had a counter-strategy. When Dr. Felicity submitted her psychological report, Deborah's defense challenged its impartiality. When testimonies from the manor staff were attached to the process, witnesses suddenly appeared, claiming that Roderick was an absent father and that Deborah was the one who truly cared for Sophia. In the meantime, Julian Myers continued his journalistic investigation. Something in Deborah Montgomery's official story bothered him. He decided to investigate the New Beginnings Foundation, so praised by the media, more deeply. After weeks of investigation, he discovered that the institution existed primarily on paper. Donations received from businessmen and celebrities had a nebulous destination, and charitable activities were, for the most part, photographic events for the press without real impact. Even more disturbing was what he discovered about Deborah's past. Before adopting the surname Montgomery, she was called Deborah Saunders and had worked as an image consultant for politicians and businessmen in Manchester. Her former colleague, who preferred not to be identified, revealed to Julian that Deborah was known for her ruthless ambition and for doing anything to get ahead in life. The journalist also located a previous family. Deborah had lived with a divorced businessman with a teenage daughter in Birmingham. The young woman, now 19, initially refused to speak, but after guarantees of anonymity, confirmed having experienced a similar situation to Sophia's: psychological ill-treatment when her father was not present, isolation from friends and family, and a constant campaign to discredit her when she tried to speak about the abuse. "She destroyed my relationship with my father," the young woman recounted. "She made me seem like a problematic, lying, manipulative teenager. No one believed me. I ended up moving in with my mother in another county to escape that situation. My father only realized who she really was when she abandoned him after finding a better match in London." Armed with this new information, Julian prepared a second article, even more forceful than the first. This time, while still avoiding direct names for legal reasons, he left enough clues for readers to make the connection with Deborah and her supposed philanthropy. The impact was immediate. Other press outlets, realizing there was a bigger story than it seemed, began their own investigations into the New Beginnings Foundation. Uncomfortable questions arose. Where were the beneficiary children? How were the funds applied? Why were there no transparent financial reports? Deborah, feeling the net closing in, decided to intensify her offensive. Through her legal team, she obtained an injunction compelling Roderick to allow her to visit Sophia twice a week under supervision. The justification was that the maternal bond was being harmed by the prolonged separation. When Louisa informed Sophia about the mandatory visits, the girl's reaction was panic. "I don't want to see her. She's going to take me away. She said she'd put me in a bad place if I told." Roderick, desperate over his daughter's suffering, consulted his lawyer. "I can't allow this. You saw her state. It would be re-victimization." "Unfortunately, we have to comply with the injunction," replied the lawyer, Dr. Paul Randall, a family law specialist, "but we can ensure that visits take place in a controlled environment, with the presence of the psychologist and the social worker. And we will document any adverse reaction from Sophia to use as evidence against future visits." The first supervised visit was scheduled to take place at Dr. Felicity's office. Deborah arrived punctually, wearing a discreet navy blue suit that gave her a serious and maternal air, very different from her usual designer clothes. She brought with her an expensive doll and a box of fine chocolates. Her behavior was studiously contained and appropriate. Sophia, seeing her stepmother enter the room, instinctively moved closer to Louisa, clinging to her hand. The social worker could feel the small body trembling. "Sophia, darling, I've missed you so much," exclaimed Deborah, approaching with open arms for a hug. The girl recoiled, hiding behind Louisa. "Perhaps we should take it easy," suggested Dr. Felicity, indicating chairs where they could sit. "Sophia might need time to feel comfortable. During the next hour, Deborah maintained the facade of a loving and concerned stepmother, asking questions about Sophia's well-being, offering gifts, mentioning how empty the house was without her. But her eyes told another story. When she thought the professionals weren't watching, she cast intimidating glances at Sophia, too subtle to be caught by the cameras recording the session, but perfectly clear to the child who had learned to read these expressions as a survival mechanism. At the end of the visit, when Deborah leaned in to give Sophia a goodbye kiss, she whispered something in the girl's ear. Sophia's body instantly stiffened. As soon as Deborah left, Sophia broke down in tears. She said this wouldn't last long. "That she's going to take me away and no one will be able to save me," the girl sobbed. Louisa and Dr. Felicity exchanged alarmed glances. "Sophia, are you sure? No one else heard that." "It's true," Sophia insisted through tears. "She always does that. Says things when no one is listening. And then says I'm lying." Dr. Felicity made detailed notes about Sophia's reaction and the alleged whisper. "This is consistent with the pattern of psychological abuse we identified. Veiled threats, manipulation, gaslighting. We will include this in the report for the judge." After the visit, Louisa met with Roderick. "We need to be strategic. Deborah is intelligent and is playing by the system's rules. If we refuse to comply with the visitation injunction, we will look like the villains of the story." "So what do you suggest?" Roderick asked, exhausted. "Continue documenting everything. Every reaction from Sophia, every detail. And meanwhile, intensify the investigation into Deborah's past and that foundation. Julian Myers is doing a great job in that regard. If we can establish a pattern of previous behavior, we will have a much stronger case." That night, as Sophia finally slept, Roderick found a small folded note in his daughter's jacket pocket. In childish handwriting, it read, "Daddy, she said she's going to take me away from you. I'm very scared." With tears in his eyes, Roderick photographed the note and immediately sent it to Louisa and Dr. Paul. This was the proof they needed. Deborah was continuing her intimidation tactics, even under supervision. At Albury Manor, now inhabited only by Deborah, the atmosphere was one of frantic planning. In her luxurious office, surrounded by lawyers and image consultants, she plotted her next move. The plan involved a daring maneuver, requesting the court for Sophia's temporary hospitalization in a luxury psychiatric clinic, claiming that the girl was emotionally disturbed and being manipulated by her father. "If we can get her hospitalized, we'll have total control over who can visit her," explained Dr. Raymond. "This would neutralize the influence of both Roderick and the social worker and psychologist." Deborah smiled, satisfied. The media siege might be closing in, but she still had important cards to play. And she was not willing to lose either her social status or access to the Albury fortune. Dr. Felicity Stone's office was silent that Friday afternoon. Sophia, sitting at a small table, was drawing with vibrant colors, something she rarely did before. The psychologist watched intently, noting the subtle but significant changes in the girl's behavior in recent weeks. "What are you drawing today, Sophia?" Felicity asked in a soft voice. Sophia looked up from the paper. Her eyes, once constantly apprehensive, now showed flashes of the vivacity typical of a 7-year-old. "I'm drawing Daddy and me at the park," she replied, pointing to the colorful figures. "And here's Aunt Bee having a picnic with us. And this is Mrs. Louisa." Felicity smiled, observing how Sophia had represented Louisa Miller, a tall figure with a large red heart on her chest. It was evident that the social worker had become an important source of security for the girl. "Sophia, today we're going to talk a little about your feelings. Do you remember our emotion traffic light?" The child nodded. It was a technique they had developed together. Green for when she felt safe and happy, yellow for moments of worry, and red for situations of intense fear. "How did you feel yesterday during the visit from your stepmother?" Sophia's face immediately changed. She dropped the colored pencil and hugged her own knees. "Red," she whispered. "Very red." Meanwhile, at the central London courthouse, Louisa Miller was reviewing with concern the new documents she had received. Deborah's request for Sophia's psychiatric hospitalization, under the pretext of intensive evaluation and treatment, had been discreetly filed the previous afternoon. "This is absurd," commented Dr. Paul Randall, who was accompanying the case alongside Roderick. There is no clinical indication for hospitalization. Dr. Felicity has clearly documented that Sophia is responding well to outpatient therapy. Louisa nodded gravely. It's a desperate tactic, but a dangerous one. Deborah has influential contacts in the medical field. If she can get a renowned psychiatrist to endorse this idea, Louisa's concern was justified. That same morning, she had been informed by a colleague from the family court that a renowned psychiatrist, Dr. Alistair Maxwell, had signed an opinion recommending evaluation in a controlled environment for Sophia without ever having personally examined the child. We need to act fast, Louisa said. I'm going to request an emergency meeting with Judge Claudia. Meanwhile, it would be prudent to increase security around Sophia. Roderick ran his hand through his hair, demonstrating his exhaustion. Do you think Deborah would try something drastic? I hope not, but cornered people can make extreme decisions, and she's under increasing pressure, especially after Julian Myers' second report. The journalist's second article, published the day before, had detonated a real bomb. Titled Facade Philanthropy, Behind the Scenes of the New Beginnings Foundation, the report exposed in detail the lack of transparency in the institution's accounts and questioned the destination of millions in donations received in recent years. Even more devastating were the anonymous testimonies of other families who reported disturbing experiences with Deborah, establishing a clear pattern of predatory behavior. The article had generated a wave of repercussions. Sponsoring companies began to withdraw their support for the foundation. Celebrities who had endorsed Deborah's work now demanded clarification, and HM Revenue and Customs announced an audit of the organization's accounts. At Albury Manor, Deborah consumed anxiolytics as she watched her reputation crumble. Calls of solidarity from influential friends, once frequent, had practically ceased. Her phone rang incessantly, but it was only journalists eager for a comment on the accusations. You need to make an official statement, insisted her press advisor, Clara Palmer. Silence only fuels speculation. And say what? Deborah exploded, throwing a crystal glass against the wall. That everything I built is falling apart because of the lies of a spoiled child and a sensationalist journalist? Dr. Raymond, who was present at the meeting, intervened in a calm voice. We need to focus on the plan. The hearing to decide on the hospitalization request is scheduled for Monday. If we can get the judge to approve it, that will completely change the game. Deborah took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. What if we don't? I have to consider all possibilities now. The lawyer and the advisor exchanged apprehensive glances. It was the first time they had seen Deborah consider the possibility of defeat. There's always the option of a settlement proposal, Dr. Raymond suggested cautiously. We could negotiate regular supervised visits in exchange for dropping the most serious accusations. Roderick seems open to solutions that prioritize Sophia's well-being. Settlement? Deborah's voice was icy. After everything we've been through? After having my name dragged through the mud? No, Raymond. There will be no settlement. That night, Deborah's alternative plan began to take shape. Through obscure connections, she hired a man named Vincent, a former police officer with a nebulous history, for a special mission. The task was simple, but risky. Locate and gain access to Sophia, using any means necessary. I don't want to know how you're going to do it, Deborah instructed during a discreet meeting in a secluded cafe away from the city center. I just need you to bring the girl to me. I have documents and passports prepared. Once she's with me, we'll head overseas immediately. Vincent, a man of few words and flexible morals, listened attentively as he counted the high-value notes Deborah had slipped him under the table. When? Sunday night. I heard Roderick has an engagement, and the girl will be with her aunt. So it will be easier than trying something at the courthouse or during a supervised visit. What Deborah didn't know was that her phone had been placed under judicial wiretap 2 days earlier, after Louisa had presented Judge Claudia with concrete evidence of Sophia's continuous intimidation. Every word of her conversation with Vincent was being recorded and analyzed by the investigation team assigned to the case. In Beatrice's apartment, the tension was palpable. Roderick had been informed about the possible threat to Sophia and was reinforcing the security of the premises. I'm not going to any engagement on Sunday, he assured Louisa, who had come personally to warn him. It was false information we planted to see how she would react. And she took the bait. Louisa nodded, satisfied with the strategy. Judge Claudia is already aware of everything. She issued a pre-trial detention order that will be executed as soon as we have enough evidence of an attempted kidnapping. But we need to be extremely careful. Sophia cannot even suspect what is happening. In the next room, Sophia played quietly with Beatrice, oblivious to the danger surrounding her. The two were assembling a giant puzzle while talking about trivial things. The girl's favorite ice cream flavor, the name she would give a puppy if she had one, the countries she would like to visit one day. Small flashes of normalcy in a life recently marked by chaos. On Sunday, as predicted, Vincent parked a discreet car near Beatrice's apartment. He observed the building's movements for hours, identifying entrances and exits, studying the porter's routines. What he didn't notice were the plainclothes police officers strategically positioned at various points on the block, nor the additional cameras discreetly installed to record his every move. Inside apartment 501, Roderick, Louisa, a plainclothes police investigator, and Beatrice remained alert, alternating surveillance shifts while trying to maintain a normal atmosphere for Sophia. She doesn't notice anything strange, the investigator asked Louisa in a low voice. Children are more perceptive than we imagine, Louisa replied. She feels something is different, but we attribute it to anxiety about tomorrow's hearing. Dr. Felicity has been talking to her, preparing her emotionally. Around 7 p.m., Vincent finally made his move. He approached the building's service entrance dressed as a food delivery driver, carrying a pizza box. Using a fake app on his phone, he convinced the doorman that there was an order for apartment 502, exactly next to Beatrice's. The plan was simple. Once inside the building, he would force entry into apartment 501 using specialized tools, neutralize any adults present, and leave with Sophia via an alternative route, where another car awaited him. What Vincent didn't expect was the reception that awaited him. As soon as he exited the elevator on the 5th floor and approached the door of apartment 502, he was confronted by two plainclothes police officers who had been watching him through the peephole. "Police! Freeze!" one of them ordered, drawing his weapon. Vincent, realizing the trap, dropped the pizza box and tried to run, but the corridor was blocked by two other agents climbing the emergency stairs. In a matter of seconds, he was immobilized and handcuffed. Inside apartment 501, Sophia, who was watching a movie with Beatrice, remained oblivious to the drama unfolding in the corridor. Roderick, however, observed everything through the hastily installed security system. "Is it over?" he asked Louisa, who was receiving updates via radio. "This part, yes. Vincent is arrested and will cooperate to reduce his sentence. We have everything recorded. Deborah's instructions, the attempted invasion. Judge Claudia has already been informed and is issuing an arrest warrant for Deborah right now." Roderick sank onto the sofa, exhausted and relieved. "I never thought it would come to this. How can a person transform into something so monstrous?" Louisa sat beside him. In her years of career, she had seen many similar cases, but each one still affected her deeply. Power and control are addictive for certain personality types. When threatened, these individuals are capable of extreme actions to maintain their position. The next morning, newspapers headlined the news of Deborah Montgomery of Albury's arrest, accused of attempted kidnapping, in addition to the previous charges of psychological abuse against a minor. Images of her being escorted by police, still dressed in elegant clothes, but with her face disfigured by fury, quickly circulated on news reports and social media. The hearing to decide on the psychiatric hospitalization request was cancelled, and in its place a new hearing was scheduled to re-evaluate all protective measures related to Sophia. In Beatrice's apartment, Louisa and Dr. Felicity explained the situation to Sophia with carefully chosen words, appropriate for her age and understanding. "Your stepmother did something wrong, and now she is with people who will help her understand that what she did was not okay," Louisa explained. "She won't be able to hurt me anymore," Sophia asked, her large eyes fixed on Louisa's. "No, darling, she won't be able to hurt you anymore. And I won't have to go to that place for problematic children." Louisa felt her heart clench. Sophia, that place doesn't exist. It was a story she made up to scare you. There's nothing wrong with you, you're not problematic, and you won't go anywhere you don't want to go. For the first time since she had met her, Louisa saw a genuine, carefree smile light up Sophia's face. The girl stood up and, on an impulse, hugged Louisa with all the strength her small arms allowed. "Thank you," she whispered. At that moment, amidst the tears she couldn't hold back, Louisa reaffirmed to herself why she had chosen that difficult and often distressing profession. Because moments like that, when a child finally felt safe after so much suffering, made all the sacrifice worthwhile. The central London courthouse was exceptionally busy that Thursday morning. Journalists, photographers and onlookers crowded the corridors, all eager for the hearing that would begin shortly. The case the press had already dubbed The Princess and the Stepmother, in reference to the contrast between Sophia's innocence and Deborah's calculating coldness. In the room reserved for witnesses, Louisa adjusted Mr. Augustus's tie, the former gardener of Albury Manor. The 70-year-old man, with calloused hands and a humble posture, seemed out of place in his borrowed suit. "I'm nervous, Miss Miller," he confessed. "I've never been in a courtroom before." Louisa smiled encouragingly. "Mr. Augustus, you just need to tell what you saw. Nothing more, nothing less. Your voice is important, so that Sophia receives the justice she deserves." Beside them, Mrs. Josephine repeatedly smoothed the non-existent creases of her skirt, an automatic gesture that revealed her anxiety. The housekeeper had worked for the Alburys for over 15 years and now faced the dilemma of testifying against a former employer. What if she gets away with it? What if she comes after us later? She asked in a low voice. "That won't happen," Louisa assured her. "The evidence is solid and you are protected by law. Remember, you are not just witnesses, you are heroes for that girl." In Judge Claudia Rivers' chambers, a preliminary meeting was taking place before the formal hearing. The magistrate, known for her firm stance in cases involving children, listened attentively to the lawyer's final considerations. "Your Honor," Dr. Raymond Vance argued, "my client acknowledges that she may have overstepped in her educational methods, but this is far from constituting abuse. As for Sunday's incident, it was a misunderstanding amplified by a biased investigation." Judge Claudia adjusted her glasses, her penetrating gaze fixing on the lawyer. "Dr. Raymond, I have in hand recordings, psychological reports, eyewitness testimonies, and more seriously, evidence of an attempted kidnapping. To call this a misunderstanding is at the very least an affront to the intelligence of this court." Deborah's lawyer recoiled slightly. Even for an experienced professional like him, the case was becoming indefensible. His client, currently in pre-trial detention, refused to accept agreements or admit any guilt, insisting on an aggressive strategy that he knew was counterproductive. "Your Honor," Dr. Paul Randall intervened, representing Roderick and Sophia, "we would like to emphasize that our priority is the child's well-being. Any decision must primarily consider the trauma suffered and the recovery process already initiated." The judge nodded. "That will be clear during the hearing, Dr. Paul. Now, there is an important matter to consider: Sophia's presence or absence in court." Louisa, who was attending the meeting as the assigned social worker, spoke up. "Your Honor, Dr. Felicity and I assess that it would be potentially traumatic for Sophia to face her stepmother in this environment. We suggest that her testimony, if necessary, be taken separately, in a child-appropriate room and with psychological support." "Agreed," the judge decided after a brief reflection. "We will begin the hearing in 20 minutes. And Dr. Raymond, I advise you to speak with your client again about the stance she intends to adopt. The court will not look favorably on any attempt at manipulation or victimhood in this case." The courtroom was packed when Deborah Montgomery of Albury was escorted in by 2 female police officers. Even wearing the standard prison uniform, she maintained an arrogant posture, her chin held high in defiance. Her eyes, however, betrayed the underlying panic. Roderick, sitting beside his lawyer, avoided looking directly at his ex-wife. In their 2 years together, he had never imagined that the elegant and seemingly dedicated woman he had known harbored such capacity for cruelty. The hearing lasted for hours, with the prosecution methodically presenting the gathered evidence. The testimonies of Mr. Augustus and Mrs. Josephine were particularly impactful, detailing episodes of disproportionate punishments, deprivations, and systematic humiliations imposed on Sophia. One rainy afternoon, Mrs. Josephine recounted, her voice choked with emotion, "I found Sophia locked on the outdoor veranda, drenched and trembling with cold. When I asked Mrs. Deborah why the girl was outside, she replied that it was a punishment for having dirtied the new rug. A 7-year-old child, Your Honor, left in the rain for hours because of a stain on a rug." Dr. Felicity presented her psychological report, explaining in clear terms the impact of continued abuse on Sophia's emotional development. The child exhibited all the classic indicators of trauma: behavioral regression, sleep disturbances, extreme anxiety, constant fear of abandonment or punishment. Her drawings revealed an internal world dominated by terror and uncertainty. When it was time for Deborah's testimony, the anticipation in the room was palpable. Everyone waited to see if she would maintain her stance of denial, or if, confronted with the weight of the evidence, she would adopt a strategy of repentance. To everyone's surprise, Deborah chose a third path. With studied calm, she looked directly at the judge and declared, "Your Honor, I exercised my role as an educator of a child who needed boundaries. If the methods seem severe to some, it is because we live in a society that no longer values discipline. As for the accusations of attempted kidnapping, they are completely fabricated by a vengeful ex-husband who could not bear to see my professional success overshadow his." A murmur ran through the room. Even her own lawyer seemed uncomfortable with the chosen approach. Judge Claudia, known for rarely showing emotion during hearings, could not completely hide her astonishment at the lack of remorse. "Ms. Albury, are you aware that we have recordings of your conversation with Mr. Vincent, where you clearly planned the kidnapping of the child?" the magistrate inquired. "Those recordings were edited and taken out of context," Deborah replied without hesitation. "I was just organizing a surprise visit within what is allowed to me as a mother." The judge exchanged a brief glance with the prosecutor, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Deborah's defense strategy was effectively burying any chance of clemency. After a brief pause for deliberation, the hearing resumed for closing statements. It was at this moment that the unexpected twist occurred. Julian Myers, the journalist from The Truth, who had initiated the investigation into Deborah, rushed into the courtroom and addressed the prosecutor, handing him a folder with documents. After a quick review, the prosecutor requested permission to present new evidence. "Your Honor, we have just received information that significantly complements this case. Documents from HM Revenue and Customs confirm that the New Beginnings Foundation, directed by the accused, was used for money laundering. More seriously, we have located 2 other children in different counties who were subjected to similar patterns of abuse by Ms. Albury in previous relationships." The revelation caused a stir in the room. Deborah, for the first time, lost her composure, standing up abruptly. "This is a conspiracy. They are all against me. That lying, ungrateful girl." "Miss Albury, control yourself, or you will be removed from the room," the judge warned, her voice firm. In the following minutes, the prosecutor detailed how Deborah had established a consistent pattern over the years. She approached wealthy men with vulnerable children, isolated the children from their support networks, and exerted systematic psychological abuse, always under the guise of a dedicated stepmother and a generous philanthropist. At the end of the hearing, Judge Claudia did not need much time for her decision. In a solemn voice, she pronounced, "This court has rarely witnessed such a disturbing case of breach of trust and calculated cruelty against a child. The evidence is unequivocal, and the accused's justifications are deeply disturbing. I order the continued pretrial detention of Deborah Montgomery of Albury, while she awaits trial for the crimes of psychological abuse against a minor, attempted kidnapping, and now also for financial fraud. As for the minor Sophia Albury, she remains in the exclusive custody of her father, Roderick Albury, with continued psychological support." The judge paused, looking directly at Deborah. "This case reminds us that abuse does not always leave visible marks, but the emotional scars can be as deep or deeper. The courage of a child to finally speak and the attention of a father to finally listen were crucial to breaking this cycle of abuse." When the session concluded, Deborah was removed from the room, still protesting her innocence. Roderick, visibly emotional, approached Louisa and Dr. Felicity. "How can I thank you for everything you've done for Sophia? For saving us?" Louisa smiled, her eyes tired but satisfied. "There's no need for thanks. Seeing Sophia recover her childhood will be reward enough." As they left the courthouse, facing the crowd of journalists and photographers, Julian Myers discreetly approached the group. "Mr. Albury, Miss Miller, I just wanted to say that I have rarely seen so much courage and determination in a case like this. You faced not just one person, but an entire system that usually protects the powerful." "Your work was fundamental, Julian," Louisa acknowledged. "Without your reports, we might not have been able to expose the whole truth." The journalist nodded modestly. "That's what investigative journalism is for, to give a voice to those who don't have the power to be heard." In Beatrice's apartment, Sophia anxiously awaited news. When her father finally arrived, accompanied by Louisa and Dr. Felicity, the girl ran into his arms. "Is it really over, Daddy? She won't come back?" Roderick hugged his daughter tightly, lifting her off the ground. "It's over, my love. You are safe now. I promise I will never let anyone hurt you again." Sophia looked over her father's shoulder, her eyes meeting Louisa's. There was a special connection there, forged through slowly rebuilt trust. With a small smile, the girl extended her hand, inviting Louisa to join the hug. "Thank you for believing in me," Sophia said, her voice small but firm. Louisa, an experienced professional who rarely allowed herself emotional displays during cases, could not hold back tears as she joined the embrace. "You are the bravest person I have ever met, Sophia," she whispered. That night, for the first time in many months, Sophia slept deeply, without nightmares. In her new sketchbook, a page showed a smiling girl holding hands with a tall man and a gray-haired woman under a large yellow sun. In the corner of the page, in her childish but determined handwriting, she had written, "My true family." Justice had prevailed not only in the courts, but in what truly mattered, restoring to a child the fundamental right to grow up without fear, surrounded by genuine love and protection. 6 months had passed since the hearing that had definitively changed the course of the Alburys' lives. Autumn arrived in London, bringing a gentle breeze that swayed the curtains of Roderick and Sophia's new apartment in Brighton. Smaller than Albury Manor in Highview Heights, but infinitely more welcoming. The home they had chosen together was near the sea, Sophia's favorite place to play on weekends. In the living room, decorated with vibrant colors and photographs of happy moments, Sophia sat before a cake decorated with 8 candles. It was her birthday, and around the table were the people who had become her true family. Her father, Aunt Beatrice, Mrs. Josephine, who now worked for them on a regular schedule, with all labor rights, Mr. Augustus, who cared for the veranda plants and told fantastic stories about magical trees, Dr. Felicity, and, of course, Louisa Miller. "Make a wish before you blow, darling," Roderick said, filming the moment with his phone. Sophia closed her eyes for an instant, concentrating, and then blew out the candles with determination. Everyone applauded, and the girl smiled, a genuine, carefree smile that months ago seemed impossible. The journey to that moment had been challenging. In the weeks that followed the hearing, the press continued to report on the case, with new revelations emerging about Deborah's past and the activities of the New Beginnings Foundation. Roderick made the difficult decision to sell Albury Manor in Highview Heights, laden with painful memories for Sophia, and start anew in a different environment. Therapy with Dr. Felicity continued, now in bi-weekly sessions. Sophia's nightmares became increasingly rare, and her confidence grew gradually. At her new school, she made friends more easily and actively participated in activities, something unthinkable during the period under Deborah's influence. "Who wants the first piece of cake?" Beatrice asked, taking on the role of enthusiastic hostess she so loved. "I want to give the first piece to Ms. Miller," Sophia declared, looking fondly at the social worker. Louisa, who officially no longer followed the case, but maintained a special relationship with the family, was touched by the gesture. In her many years of career, she rarely witnessed the positive results of her work so directly and gratifyingly. "That's very generous of you, Sophia." "Thank you," she replied, accepting the plate with an emotional smile. As everyone enjoyed the cake and chatted animatedly, The doorbell rang. Roderick went to answer it and returned accompanied by Julian Myers, who was carrying a colorful package. "I hope I'm not late for the party," the journalist said, slightly awkwardly. "I stopped by to drop off a gift for the birthday girl." Sophia ran to greet him with a hug. Although she didn't fully understand the role Julian had played in her story, she knew he was an important part of the group that had helped her. "You came just in time for cake, Julian," the girl exclaimed, pulling him by the hand. After singing Happy Birthday again, now with Julian present, the adults gathered on the veranda while Sophia and two school friends, who had arrived for the second part of the party, played in the living room under Mrs. Josephine's supervision. "How are things at the newspaper?" Roderick asked Julian, serving him coffee. "Busy. After the series of reports on Sophia's case, we received dozens of similar complaints. It seems we opened a Pandora's box," the journalist replied. "We are working on a special report about child psychological abuse in elite families. The visibility of your case encouraged many people to speak up." Louisa nodded, familiar with the reality Julian described. "It's a much more common problem than one imagines, especially because influential families have resources to maintain appearances and silence victims. What happened to Sophia, unfortunately, is not an exception." "And what about Deborah?" Beatrice asked, lowering her voice so the children wouldn't hear. "Any news?" Julian took a sip of coffee before replying. "The trial is scheduled for next month. With the new evidence of financial fraud and the testimonies of other victims, the prosecution is confident of a severe conviction. Sophia still asks about her sometimes," Roderick commented with a worried expression. "Dr. Felicity says it's natural, part of the process of understanding what happened." The psychologist, who was listening to the conversation, intervened with her characteristic serenity. "That's exactly it. Sophia is processing her experiences and trying to make sense of the behavior of someone who should have protected her, but hurt her. It's healthy for her to talk about it in a safe environment." Mr. Augustus, who had been listening silently until then, added with his simple wisdom, "The strongest plants are those that have faced storms, you know. Little Sophia will grow strong because of all this. You can already see it in her eyes." The group nodded in silent agreement, watching the children playing carefree through the window. Hours later, when the party had ended and the guests were leaving, Sophia asked for a moment alone with Louisa. The two sat on the small swing installed on the veranda, contemplating the sky that was beginning to display its first stars. "Miss Miller, can I show you something?" Sophia asked, holding a colorful notebook. "Of course, darling." Sophia opened the notebook, revealing a series of drawings. Unlike the dark drawings Louisa had found in the manor months ago, these overflowed with color and joy. Smiling people, sunny landscapes, animals, typical images of a happy and secure child. "This is my new drawing diary," Sophia explained. "I kept the other one in a special box. Dr. Felicity said I don't need to throw it away, that it's part of my story, but that I can start a new one." Louisa felt a knot in her throat as she turned the pages, witnessing the girl's emotional transformation through her art. "This one here is special," Sophia said, pointing to a specific drawing. The image showed what appeared to be a courtroom, with small figures representing the people involved in the case. In the center, a girl holding hands with a man and a gray-haired woman faced a shadowy figure that diminished as it moved away. "It's the day I became free from fear." Louisa put her arm around Sophia's shoulders, gently pulling her into a half-hug. "You know what I admire most about you, Sophia? Your courage. It took a lot of courage to tell the truth, to trust people again after everything you went through." Sophia rested her head on Louisa's shoulder, comfortable with the physical contact, another sign of her recovery, as she used to flinch at the slightest touch. "Ms. Miller, when I grow up, I want to help other children like you helped me. You already are helping, you know. Your story inspired other families to seek help. And I'm sure that whatever you choose to do in the future, you will touch many lives positively." On the other side of the veranda, Roderick observed the scene with a heart full of gratitude. In the darkest moments of that journey, he had doubted that they could one day recover normalcy, the everyday joy of simply living without fear. Now, seeing his daughter smile and make plans for the future, he knew they had achieved more than just surviving. They were thriving. The following week, Sophia returned to her school routine with renewed enthusiasm. Her teacher, Carla Nelson, had noticed the impressive transformation of her student over the months. From a withdrawn and fearful girl, Sophia had become participatory and creative, often helping classmates with difficulties. "Your father must be very proud of you," the teacher commented after Sophia presented a project on My Heroes to the class. On the colorful poster, the girl had drawn not only her father, but also Louisa, Dr. Felicity, Aunt Beatrice, Mrs. Josephine, Mr. Augustus, and even Julian. "They are my chosen family," Sophia explained to the class, with the peculiar wisdom that children develop after profound experiences. Family isn't just about blood, but about who truly cares for you. Teacher Carla, who knew Sophia's story through conversations with Roderick and the school staff, had to hide her emotion at the little student's maturity. That same day, while picking Sophia up from school, Roderick was approached by another mother. With a hesitant expression and a low voice, the woman confessed that her daughter was living a similar situation with her stepfather, and that Sophia's presentation had given her the courage to seek help. "I saw the news about your case, but it seemed so distant from my reality. Until I heard your daughter speak today with such strength, even being so small." Roderick immediately provided Louisa's contacts and the family court, offering support in whatever was necessary. As he watched the woman walk away, he thought about how the cycle of healing and transformation was expanding, reaching other families, other children. In her city center office, Louisa Miller handled a growing number of complaints inspired by Sophia's case. With the visibility the case had gained, many people who had previously remained silent out of fear or shame now sought help. The social worker had become a reference in the fight against child psychological abuse, especially in socio-economically privileged families. What Sophia's case taught us, Louisa explained during a lecture for professionals in the field, is that abuse can hide behind the most elegant doors and the most impeccable appearances. Our obligation is to see beyond the facades and truly listen to the children. On the eve of Deborah's trial, Roderick found Sophia sitting on her bed, thoughtfully looking at an old photograph where she appeared beside her ex-stepmother at a charity event. The image perfectly captured the duality that had marked that relationship. While Deborah smiled broadly for the cameras, her arm around Sophia seemed more like a claw than a gesture of affection. "Are you thinking about her?" Roderick asked, sitting beside his daughter. Sophia nodded. "Sometimes I wonder why she didn't like me." Roderick took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "Sophia, what happened wasn't your fault. Some people like Deborah don't know how to truly love. They only know how to control, to dominate. And that has nothing to do with who you are or what you did. Do you understand that?" The girl reflected for a moment. "Dr. Felicity told me something similar. That sometimes people pretend to love because they want something, like money or power. It's sad, isn't it?" "Very sad," Roderick agreed, once again admiring his daughter's capacity for understanding. "But do you know what's beautiful? That even after everything you went through, you still have so much love to give. That shows how strong you are inside." Sophia put the photograph back in the box where she kept memories of the past, not to torment herself, but to remember where she had started and how much she had achieved. "Daddy, tomorrow can I visit Ms. Miller after school? I want to show her my essay that got top marks." "Of course you can. I'm sure she'll love it." Deborah Montgomery of Albury's trial proceeded as expected. Faced with irrefutable evidence and multiple testimonies, she was sentenced to serve time for psychological abuse of a minor, attempted kidnapping, and financial fraud related to the New Beginnings Foundation. The sentence, considered exemplary by the Crown Prosecution Service, would initially be served in a closed regime. Sophia, protected from all the details of the trial, only knew the essentials, that Deborah would be away for a long time and could no longer hurt other children. For the girl, that was enough to move forward. On a sunny Sunday morning, 2 months after the trial, Sophia participated in an outdoor painting class on Brighton Beach, organized by a social project. Mr. Augustus, who had discovered a talent for teaching art to children after his retirement as a gardener, guided the little artists with patience and enthusiasm. From afar, Louisa and Roderick observed, talking about Sophia's progress and the developments of the case that had united their lives. "She's really blossoming," Louisa commented, watching Sophia laugh freely as she painted the sea in vibrant shades of blue and turquoise. "Thanks to you," Roderick replied. "I can never thank you enough for what you did for us." Louisa smiled, her eyes never leaving Sophia's radiant figure among the other children. "I only did my job. The true heroine of this story has always been her." At that moment, as if she felt they were talking about her, Sophia looked in their direction and waved enthusiastically, proudly displaying her painting. The canvas showed a sunny beach with several figures holding hands, her chosen family, as she liked to call them. Above the group, a large yellow sun shone brightly, dispelling all shadows. It was the perfect image of her rebuilt world, luminous, safe, and full of true love. "Daddy!" "Miss Miller, come see what I painted," Sophia called, her bright eyes reflecting the London sunshine. As they walked along the sand towards her, Roderick and Louisa exchanged a look of shared satisfaction. That child who had once trembled with fear now radiated confidence and joy. Justice had been done not only in the courts but in real life, in the daily life of a girl who could finally be simply a child, free, loved and protected. And Sophia, in her wisdom of newly turned 8, perhaps understood better than anyone the deeper meaning of that journey. That even in the darkest stories, light always finds a way to shine again. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope Sophia's story and her journey in search of justice have deeply touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey, we have prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories that explore human resilience in the face of the greatest challenges. Find it here by clicking on the left. If you were moved by this narrative, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your like on the video. Daily we bring unique stories that reveal the complexity of life and the human capacity for overcoming. Also share your own stories of new beginnings in the comments. Your experience can inspire someone who needs hope today. We look forward to reading your comments and continuing this journey together.